Welcome to The Life Engineer with Matty J. He unpacks and interviews guests to share the tools, components, and software that's needed to build a life and mindset by design versus one of default.
So Bosch, Lee Jarmain, welcome to the podcast. Lean management. I'm going to introduce you from a pyramid, Think and Believe, ME12 linked, legacy lifts.
How many? Where are we stopping at?
So so your background's engineering. We've known each other for a while and worked in different businesses together. We just set up the charity and sort of joined forces with ME12 linked. Lean management is what we've worked together for a while, and we've chatted quite a lot about lean and studied lean management. Just explain to everyone a bit of background from you and what lean management is.
Most of my working life at some point has involved working in a lean process. Quite often it's implementing or looking at how we operate and bringing into play, obviously, these lean principles. I won't go into too much detail because we could sit here for hours talking about how lean started back in the 1440s or whatever. But the sort of the modern day lean, so to speak, started with Henry Ford. And obviously back in the day, 1914, I think it was, he produced the Model T, and he developed a process, a production line process that worked very well. It was a batch process that enabled him to produce lots and lots of black Model T vehicles. And then later on, skipping a jump now, Toyota sort of come along and said, you know, people don't want just a standard vehicle. They want to be able to choose and pick what they want, whether that be the colour, whether it be the spec or the engine size or whatever it might be. And they looked at what Henry Ford was doing, and then they came up with their own process, so to speak, that incorporated looking at the whole production line. So rather than just looking at a machine and utilising that machine to its full capacity, they looked at a lean process that was looking at the whole process from start to finish. And they looked at a thing, what they call tact time, which is looking at it's like the heartbeat of any factory or any business, where you look at the pull system of a product to customer. So rather than just saying, look, we're going to make loads of these, put them into a storeroom and hopefully at some point sell them, we're going to make product to what the customer requirements are in a just-in-time sort of process. And that's kind of the modern lean came out of sort of Toyota back in the sort of 40s. Really, I've been involved in various programs within the businesses I've been in, looking at ways of improving the processes predominantly, although it's made up of more than that. It's probably worth mentioning that you kind of got four main headings really for lean. You've got like your lean tools, which is all about 5S and Kaizen and value stream mapping. So, you know, they're all the tools that you can use to look at how the operation works.
This probably goes back to, though, when cavemen started hunting and become better than women at it because they were set up to it. So women started cooking the food and they, you know, going back to alignment, which is what you talk about with coaching, is getting everyone working in alignment. It's similar to that.
Yeah. I quite often, I think when we've spoken, you know, I do find a lot of links, particularly when you start talking about the lean culture or the lean planning of what lean is. And the lean culture is all about sort of empowerment of the people that work there, and the leadership and the team working and just changing the culture that exists within a business. And that obviously rolls into sort of quite a lot of the sort of what do you call it, the coaching that we do. You know, I mean, obviously I'm involved with coaching with younger people, but quite often understanding your worth and understanding how you work within a system is quite important, or very important.
Yeah, going back to the gardening, that placement of plants in the right environment, in the right conditions to get the best out of the plants. That full alignment from the sun all the way down to the earth, of them being fully aligned, of that process.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we've spoke a lot, especially in ME12 LinkedIn, bringing people in to align themselves in volunteering. So what you're doing in the charity compared to what I'm doing is aligned better to each of us.
Yeah.
Paul just talks to everyone, so that's fine. But that is, I remember going to an exhibition with Mandy. We set up Legacy Lifts. Me, Mandy, and Tom went to a lift exhibition. She said, "Well, what am I going to do?" And I said, "Go and make friends."
Yeah.
And she just belted off, because it was easy for her to build relationships.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'd said to her, "Go and get better insurance deals," or whatever, or work out, some better motors on machines. It just is it's that energy that it's almost linked to feng shui and everything. It's that alignment of energy. And if someone can be more efficient in whatever they do, they feel.
And that's really the important part with lean, and the cultural bit that a lot of businesses, particularly Western businesses, kind of shy away from, because it's kind of a lot more, in effect, touchy-feely type approach, and understanding the people that work for you. So it's absolutely exactly what you said, is, everyone's different in a business, and, everyone's got their different things that drive them on. For some people, it is money. They go to work, they earn money, and that's all it's, really is their driving force for them. Whereas others, they go to work to earn money, but really that's just a means to an end. Their home life, their holidays is far, far more important. And I think as a business owner, or as a director of a business, in modern lean thinking, it's important that owner understands every individual within it. And you then are able to sort of support and give them sort of challenges based on what it is that they want. If you apply the blanket view or the blanket approach, which was the case many years ago, where you were told what to do and that's it, you just get on with it, then that's not going to work for everyone, and you're not going to get the best out of your business, because you're not doing anything for that individual. Whereas if you understand everyone, if you understand what their driving force is, and you can work to that, then you'll end up with a better business. You're playing people to their strengths. And I think there's quite a lot I've seen of recent, particularly around coaching, that kind of looks at that and says, that's the important thing, is understanding individuals and what their needs and aspirations are.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast is engineering success. It's taking systems, tools, and software. And for me, I think what I found. So I got this book that I dug out, Stuffication, Living More with Less. And I remember reading that, and where I've come to link the analogies, like in the garden. If the garden didn't shed in autumn, like how would it turn up in spring? That nature has a natural process for shedding, like snakes do with their skins. Like they have a natural, and it's just a necessity to be able to get the best out of themselves. But we have just got stuffed up with holding on to stuff, baggage, and there's not a natural process. I think we've become these collectors of sticky shit. It talks in the book about if you can open the wardrobe and you have to sort of force hangers apart to put stuff in and out, or if you can't park in your garage, then you've got too much shit. And it's not until you sort of start looking at that. And I think with me, with coaching people at every level, but definitely high level, that letting go to get analogy that I come up with is actually, it's in the letting go, especially in businesses, when you're getting bigger, to be able to delegate effectively is a key skill in scaling up. And big companies, it's not just about getting more, it's being more efficient, and that's where they have the benefit. And there's so much more, I think, in day-to-day stuff, in the letting go, that people don't focus on. Everyone's focused on the getting, isn't they?
Yeah, I think quite often people that have that control, and I've seen it I've done a project abroad in France some years back, and there was very much that sort of holding on to power that existed within the culture, where they felt, sort of middle management there felt that by letting go and allowing the people to actually organise themselves and be in charge of themselves and empowering the people around them, in their minds it was they were becoming weak and they were becoming useless in their heads. Whereas instead of thinking along the lines where you're there to support that, you're there to enable that to happen, they perceived it as a loss of control and a loss of power and a loss of worth in a lot of respects. And I guess in some ways that was how it was probably not delivered as well as it should have been. But there does come that point where, people have to realise that, no matter where you are in that ladder or within that hierarchy, it's the people doing the stuff that are adding the value, and they're the ones that need supporting in doing that.
But I think that coming back to that, it's funny, there was a video on Instagram of a wolf dog type thing licking out of a hole in a frozen lake, and there was a load of dogs around him trying to drink out of it, and every time they went to drink it would growl at them.
Yeah.
And then you saw another dog looking at him, and he went across and jumped up and down to break the ice, and then sat there while all of the dogs come and drunk. Yeah. And that's quite a nice letting go of that, I've got to be first, or I've got to be. It's interesting where it comes up. I've felt it a lot in letting go, and it's interesting that's where the work is. I think when people are developing to a certain level, that if they looked at where the letting go was, everything from eating to business to like I say, to lean management. But there's an element, I think this is this egoic mind that comes in, that, like you say, they think that giving everyone else the power makes them powerless.
Yeah.
But essentially that action of giving power is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it is, and it's born out of many, 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 many generations of that's how it's been. And it does take a lot to break that down. And I think it's, again, it isn't just one thing. Within lean, there's obviously various aspects of it that have to be followed through, but it's the package that is the important thing. I mean, one of the other things I know we've talked about as well is like the wastes that exist within any process. And again, I know there's analogies with coaching with this as well, but one of the biggest things within any kind of lean environment is removing all those things that don't add any value, and you've got, depending on which one you look at, but there's sort of 8 wastes where you look at things like transportation, inventory, motion, anything that you kind of not adding value to the product is a waste, and you need to remove it. And by removing it, obviously you're then left with a very lean process because it's all adding value, and that's the important bit. And I think, again, when I've been involved in a little bit of coaching that I've been doing, and I know with yourself, quite often that sort of gardening of the rubbish, of the stuff that's not adding any value in your life is really important. And quite often I've seen with particularly young people that have not really socially developed, that spend a lot of time in the bedroom playing Xbox or whatever it might be, where they're not adding any value to their life. It is kind of become stagnant. And I think that's quite again, similarities between the lean and the coaching that quite often sort of overlap.
Well, that watering man can, the course that I developed, it was literally that you've got 24 hours, you've got one watering can, which is say 24 hours, and what are you doing with it? Because it came up with me, my coach said to me, I was like a hydraulic system that had a massive potential, but was spraying oil everywhere. And it was interesting how uncomfortable it was sort of drilling down to stay focused on certain things, which I have an issue doing. But that is that point of, and there's a really good book, I can't remember the name, but it's about A to B coaching. Is there's first things first, second things, there are no second things.
Yeah.
And when you come to that approach of do one thing and fucking nothing else until that's done, and then move on to something else. It's the same with So boxing's the same with boxing, throwing one punch and not throwing two or three, being lean in how you dissipate that energy.
Yeah.
And in what form you dissipate it, you know, so if you do it effectively, the power that can be created in that lean, effective system is so much more. And it comes up in everything. I mean, we used to, me and my brother, if we was going to take on a new lift engineer, we'd just look at their van or their car, or there's certain things, and if they were clean and tidy, that would be a massive indicator for us. Not all the time, but generally would be an indicator. I mean, there was an engineer once that was a really good guy, but you'd get on top of his lift and he'll have the grinder that was there for like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
But he could. It was an exception. But generally, I found that the guys that worked the best were the ones that were effectively clean, tidy. The housekeeping was spot on because it did make a difference, you know.
Yeah. But talking about lifts, it reminds me of that. Probably one of the first ones I've done with you in, I think it was Baker Street or somewhere up there, where we done the small, this one of the small lifts, the Stanner lift, and we arrived on the first day. And I remember I didn't have a clue what to take along with me, so I had a bag of stuff. I remember you had like bags of stuff, and then we had 2 other guys with bags of stuff. And I remember taking a picture of it, a mountain of all these tools that we had, that we'd clambered on the underground. Well, no, I don't think we did that day. We went up to a van. But then we managed to just reduce it right down, didn't we? Because we were replicating so many tools, and we reduced it down to like a couple of bags, and we were able to get on the underground the next day, sort of thing. So
I think that was quite a good process, because we did that with, so coming back to developing engineers, which we spent time doing, we started off, it was the same thing. I was developing engineers, and I would get someone with me, and we would work on one type of passenger lift 1 week, another type the next, then a completely different range of lifts. And within a year, they might work on 9 different products, but nothing perfectly with any of them. So I took it back to, we was doing micro lifts, the screwdriver platform lifts. And I think that was pretty much it, because the micro lifts we got down to doing in a day, although they've got guys that leave site at 1 because they just do it so efficiently. But where we was going and developing the engineers, but I think that's one of the things that we brought in, is we would install it and we would know every tool we had used.
Well, you come up with that brilliant bit of lean process with your magnetic strip that you did, didn't you?
Yeah, I was going to try and find that video, and it was the Ritco lift that we put a strip on it. Yeah. And then I got a tool, it was a tool roll that we had 2 hooks that we put on it, and then a magnetic strip, and then a attachment for the screwdriver, for the tape measure, and attachment for the Makita impact drivers, and then 2 pots for the tubs for the fixings.
Yeah.
But once you built the cab and you put it on there, everything was there.
That's right, yeah.
Go up and build the lift. But that, even coming back down to the kits we eventually had, we had toolboxes for certain types of lifts because you didn't need a whole set of sockets. You needed an 8, a 10 and a 15 maybe.
That's right, yeah.
But that learning process, I know that when we went back to continually do like the micro lifts, I mean, you and Andrew came on, and within a very short period, you 2 guys that were non-lift engineers were pretty much installing and commissioning the lifts, because we'd stuck on one product and we'd done a lean process of it. So we did a RAG system, didn't we? A red, amber, green for learning. So guys that never did them would all be red, and then they might, the first one, they might go to a couple of points where they'd be green, but maybe amber on a lot of it and still red, and we'd engineer them down to a point where they were all green.
Yeah.
And then they would move up, and we had a mechanical engineer and we had a technical engineer. So the mechanical guy would do more of the nuts and bolts stuff and the carrying stuff, and the technical guy would do the setting out stuff. Yeah. And that system worked really well. And then dropping on from once they did the micro lifts, we'd drop onto the screwdriver, and then we went up to the Boxer Rhino lifts, and then up to, I think it was the Thyssen stuff we was doing. Yeah.
I just remember then first sort of days, if you like, working with you, and you mentioned it just a while ago, where you said, you know, there were guys that were doing it in a day or two, because they've got good at it. And I think I just remember those first days, and like the amount of times you'd be shouting down the shaft to, "Can you bring that spanner up again?" And I thought you couldn't see it because that's how you kind of always did it or done it. And to see it, I'm thinking, I can't believe it. That guy must be knackered walking up and down them stairs, and a pack of tools downstairs and a pack of tools upstairs, but you haven't got the right size 19 because he's got it downstairs. And all he did was literally walk up and down, wasn't it, all day long? But as soon as a simple thing, which was putting that strip and hanging your stuff on, suddenly you had everything there, and no one had to bring anything. And I think that kind of mythology within any business is the thing that you need to do. And you look at it and say, well, how can we make the next step? How can we improve it, and continually improve it?
Yeah, I think the thing that happens in this, what a lot of the space that I offer with the coaching is that people don't normally see what they can't see. And having that other space, like I'll ask questions and it'll be like a room of mirrors in my environment to get to everyone to see fully. It's the same with that approach with you and Lean. If you went into a business and was seeing things from a different point of view, you would. And
that's what Lean, or the Lean groups that are involved with, did, because quite often you go into a different environment where, as you say, you've got blinkers on if you're working there. You see what you see because that's what you see every day, and that's what you do every day. So having someone come in, regardless of their background, as long as you understand what the Lean principles are, you can go in, and quite often you see a mass of different things that are going on, and the low-lying fruit kind of stuff that are really simple to just make a big, big difference. But as you say, when you're in the thick of it, you don't see it.
When I started reading this, I hadn't even got all the way through it, and I said to Sharon, I was going around, I was like, right. And I hate doing them, but I've done about 4 boot fairs. I've just got rid of everything. And I kept going around saying, are you using this? She was like, you're not getting rid of it. You're not getting rid of it. I don't know. But you know what? And this is similar to when I relate back to my coaching sessions for myself. That when I unpack and clear space of either narrative that I've had that hasn't served me, which I've got rid of, it's a bit like opening a window and feeling a breath of fresh air come through my soul almost. It's got that, and it's the same as if you do a spring clean, in the house, or you cut the grass and you weed the garden, that you then have space to grow into, or you have space to enjoy space. And that with the leanness. I mean, recently I moved, we had 2 armchairs in the kitchen by the fire, and I moved one into the other room. And it's funny how it changed the energy. I just kept walking through the rooms thinking, I really like this. Sharon didn't like it at first, but it's funny how that space and movement just changed the energy slightly.
And again, that relates to sort of Lean. One of the things that are part of the Lean culture, again, the Lean tools, is 5S, where you kind of tidy everything up, you shine everything up, and you make an environment that it's nice to come into. If there's nothing worse than coming into an environment that you don't know where it is, or you don't know where your tools are, or it's mucky and dirty and you're sitting in a crap. You don't get the best out of people. So make the environment a nice environment, a clean environment, and you'll get more out of people.
I've done it before.
We like being in a nice place.
With engineers, you've turned up on site and the lighting's crap, or the site agent's not giving them lighting, and there's crap everywhere, and they've got stuff in the way, and we just stopped and had an hour or 30 minutes and got straight and got the lighting level right, and you can see them like, wow, that it's so much better. It's funny. And the other video I saw the other day was it was like a gift thing, but it was a pit stop of a vehicle in like 20 years ago versus a pit stop.
That's weird. That I was watching that yesterday. Yeah,
and it's just I couldn't figure out what it was to start with, but I could see him changing the tires and polishing on the top part of the screen, and the bottom part of the screen, it was literally in, out.
Yeah, so they compare it to a pit stop in 1950 or whatever it was, and a modern day one. And as you say, it's sort of fractions of a second, opposed to, I think it was about a minute, where, as you say, they with a cloth they're cleaning this, and they've got hammers on the wheels, getting the tyres off and putting it on, and another guy's walking around, and they're all doing their own thing. And as you say, lean, that is the perfect example of a lean process, where they've just taken all the crap out, they've narrowed it right down and make it as efficient and as quick as possible. It is I've watched that video many times over. They do one where it takes you through the years, and you can gradually see it getting quicker and quicker and quicker. But yeah, it's a good one to look at.
Yeah, I worked for Connie for 8 years, and in terms of lift installations, I've sort of seen him from originally when I started installing them with my dad, and then seeing Connie install them. We went on a workshop once where we did it was like a roadshow thing, and we had a demonstration of how one man working could install these lifts, and the van and the lorry and the kit, it all comes out, everything's in order. So the motor comes off, you put a set of wheels on it so you can push it along to where it's got to be. Everything's lifted in the shaft off of a hoist, everything's packed in a sequence, and even a set of brackets for the guides come in a pack which is all what's it called, covered in plastic, all shrink wrapped, with a diagram of how it goes together. So you just rip that off and fit it, and every bracket's got a packet. And the system of it, the only negative is it engineers out all of the skill base, because it makes it so quick and efficient to fit that. But you've got guys fitting them. I don't know what hours they give them now, but probably sort of 70. Guys fit them in sort of 3 or 4 days, single man, the 2-slot passenger lift, which is crazy. I think you always used to have a weaker floor was generally the rule of thumb for a lift.
Yeah, and I think quite often with lean, it is about de-skilling it to a lot of the cases, but that doesn't mean to say you don't need a skill set that obviously checks things over at the end, or is there to ensure that the quality of what you're producing is obviously at its best. But it's really very much about the individual and utilising them to their full extent without them wasting any time, without them wasting any effort. And de-skilling is part of it. I mean, I worked with machines in the past that required the individual's skill set to be able to get a good weld out of it, as an example. Whereas when you bring in technology and you bring in robotics, the robot does it, and then that guy can be used to do things more useful and adding more value, if you like. So, it is part and parcel of technology. It moves on, and we're kind of moving on with it, albeit sometimes it's a bit scary, because I think that was the other conversation I had with Paul the other day. We was talking, and we were saying that, when you think in the last 100 years, just how quickly things have changed from, we spent hundreds of years kind of going from the horse and cart, all the way through to sort of 100 years ago, where we learnt to fly, and the next thing we're landing on a moon and we're flying out to space. It's just incredible.
Yes.
And keeping on top of that, I think we're seeing each generation is seeing massive changes. I watched a video the other day with 2 kids that were sitting there. They videoed them, and they were in their teens, and they had an old telephone with the dials on the front, like we used to use. And they said, "This is a telephone. How do you make a call to your friend on it?" And they were playing around with the dial. They didn't quite understand that they had to put their finger in and pull it all the way around and let it come back again. So they were just, and it was a generation or so back. It's incredible just how quickly things have changed.
I think it was Elon Musk that was talking about, and I can never remember the words, but what he was saying was this graph of change, and we shifted massively in the Iron Age, when we started getting mechanics and that. But what he was talking about, and there's some sort of space term to it, that the changes will become, such a steep curve, because we are, and especially with computers nowadays, I can't remember the name of it now, we are leaping in in this term of massive leap because of the efficiency in how we take values. There was a program I watched called The Sex of Ideas, and how it comes together, that a mouse that's made, it's not one person can do this. So not one person can mine the core materials to mold and make the plastic. Not one person can make the battery for it, and and all of the people come together, and we've got better at doing that over years, whereas before a man made a bowl and that was it. Over years, this amalgamation of skill bases where someone's a specialist in mining, and they've got lean at that, but it's this bringing them together that multiplies the growth in what we're doing. And it's scary, isn't it, when you think about how that's shifting and changing. But I do think that this living more with less at some point is it needs to kick in, because I think that the thing that we haven't got good at is letting go. So moving on to what's best next, and not holding on to what we have been doing, essentially is what I do with transformational coaching, is where you're coming from. That was the shift that people need, is this is where I was coming from. And to make a change, they need to be coming from a different place. And that shift of, because you were saying before, there was a load of people you work with and got really efficient with it, but that was at a certain level and hadn't brought in at an upper level. So the staff had done the shift and were making the changes because of the management. And this is where I think water runs down. You've got to work from the top down for real change, haven't you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, as I say, as a business owner, you have to embrace it to start with. Otherwise, it just falls short. And again, the difficulty I think for a lot of businesses is that cultural change. The process change is an easy one. It's like we can see the difference. Having this machine run efficiently and effectively and produce all the components we need in a shorter period of time, that's great. And businesses jump on that. But culture, understanding people, wanting to know what their frailties are, what things that they really enjoy and what things they really hate. There's not a lot of businesses embrace that, but they do it. They lose by not doing it. Because if you do embrace that, because people are like, in effect, they're part of your cogs of the machines that run in that business. So you want the best out of them. The same as you wouldn't get a car and it's a petrol run, you put diesel in it. Human beings need to be run as best they can be run, and it's understanding. You've got to understand a human being before you can make the best out of them.
I've got a really old Motorola flip phone that I use because companies wouldn't think twice in spending £1,000 on upgrading someone's phone if they want to put OneNote in it or software in it, because the old phones, they just don't function. My mum just bought a new Mac because the old one doesn't use or the old one doesn't use the software she wants to use, and now the new one doesn't use the old software she was using. So she's got this sort of but this is this process of upgrading. But I see coaching is the same. People would spend that money on a phone for their employee, but they wouldn't spend that money. Most companies don't see the value in upgrading the person to align better and function better in what they do.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's madness, isn't it, when you think about the amount of money a company would spend on a laptop, a phone, and essentially, and we've done this before with lifts. We've taken lifts from 4 floors to 6 floors, and you're trying to set it up and figure out why it's not working. And all it is someone's forgot to change the software to say that this isn't 4 anymore, this is 6. And then it accepts a teach, then it accepts a run, and then it functions with it. But you can put the mechanics in place. I mean, we're going to joke about Paul, who's with us on the charity. The OneNote system we've been trying to get to use for ages. The technology was there, but Paul's only just shifted to start using it, and it's taken him a while. Well, we'll joke and talk about him on it because it's funny. But but it's been funny, hasn't it?
Yeah.
On pull shifting
Yeah.
with OneNote, and I've done it a lot with other stuff before, but that shift, and you can see with us using the OneNote system,
Yeah.
that shift.
And it's change, isn't it, as well? We as human beings, we fear change. You know, I like to know what I know. You know, I know this, and it's a bit like the present situation we're in. You know, where people are having to work from home now. They're having to use Zoom. They're having to use Team, whatever it is. You know, on Microsoft, and it's forcing people into change now. But having done it, a lot are finding actually this is, you know, we can save a lot of time, we can save a lot of effort by doing it. Now that doesn't rule out the fact that probably they still need to do a bit of the other getting together and still communicating as a group. But nevertheless, it has pushed us another big leap, I think, into using technology in a way that could benefit us and save time and save energy and save fuel by staying at home, etc., etc. So, you know, I think it's we do fear change. That's how we are.
It's uncomfortable shift.
Yeah.
Is where the work is, and it's interesting is finding where that work is, because sometimes it may not be that you need new technology to be lean. You need a different mindset. You know,
yeah, absolutely,
so some examples of stuff, because I know that you spoke before about, I don't know, just was it roast dinner you talked about before? I know that I've found myself, because Sharon's away now for 5 days.
Oh,
so I've been pretty good.
I was going to say, you're really lean now. Could you just grab it out of the fridge and put it in the microwave?
I'm very good. I actually spent yesterday, we put a shed together for my mum, and I kitted it all out and shelved it all out. And that. So she had us around last night for Chinese. So I didn't cook that night. Ellie's doing the fajitas tonight. So I've been quite lean in terms of I've got everyone else to do stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because you're relying on their strengths. But we've used that as a sort of a way of explaining what lean is to people that don't understand. You go into a factory and say, right, we're going to make it lean. Well, what does that mean? Whereas if you can sort of relate it in a way that, you know, from a domestic point of view, they understand. And again, the example we used to give was, you know, if mum or dad's making Sunday lunch, you know, you sit down as a family and eat that meal all at once. You don't sit down and have all the potatoes in front of you and you've still got to wait for the chicken because it's only just been put in the oven. It's done in a timely manner. You know, we know the chicken takes, I don't, but hour and a half to cook, say, whereas potatoes only take 20 minutes. So you balance that line of production, if you like, to produce a product, which is the Sunday lunch, on the table all at once. But unfortunately, in a lot of businesses, they don't think that way. And I've seen it time and time again where, you know, you've got things going on and the product might get there and they're still making something else further down the line because it's something they haven't bothered doing at this point in time. They haven't balanced that line. Or they're wasting time. Another example we give with cooking is, you know, mum or dad has all the stuff in the kitchen. You know, they haven't got saucepans up in the bedroom or, you know, sauces and mixes out in the garden. It's all in the kitchen at easy reach to use. Whereas quite often in a factory environment in particular, you'll find that people have got things at one end of the factory that they need that they go and get routinely on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis, when really all they need to do is move it to where they're working. But that thought process doesn't always happen in a factory. It's almost like in the old way anyway, people think differently. You know, you come out of a home, you go into a factory, it's someone else's problem. And that again is where I'm talking about that cultural change, understanding that your ownership and your value within that business is the same throughout, whether you're a cleaner or whether you're a cook or whether you're the manager and director. Everyone has a role to play and everyone is as important as the next. So yeah, the cooking one's a good one. It's a good analogy to sort of get that point over.
So you got any tips?
What for you cooking over the next couple of weeks?
Just go back to my mum's.
Yeah, just keep going around your mum's and getting other people to do it. And that is, you know, in a lot of respects, that is what lean is about. It isn't about saying, I'm going to do it all. It's about saying, I've got a team of people here. And if we all do our bit and we play everyone to our strengths, we're going to be really successful.
I think that
we can make the best of it.
when I sort of in business and in coaching, I got to a point where I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to make asking for help or outsourcing a habit.
Yeah.
And it went from, I think I read the 4-Hour Work Week with Tim Ferriss. That was one of the things where I started thinking differently. And I got a VA, and I was using a VA guy in India. Worked every morning, and I would allocate stuff to him. And I just remember thinking then that I had spent so much time thinking I've got to do it all.
Yeah.
And this comes with this acceptance of letting go of I need to do it all, and getting used to saying, can you help me and teach me? Can you help me? And that shift for me was different, because I started seeing something differently. It opens up a lot of potential, because if you need to improve marketing, for example, outsourcing and finding someone that can help you do that is an efficient way of doing it, because otherwise you're going back to learning all of what they learn, or shortcut it and just get them to teach you in.
Yeah. I think the one thing, if I was to say, look at anything in any business or, in any environment, if you like, where you're doing a process, is to look at the wastes. Anything you're doing that isn't adding value, whether that's sitting around, whether that's waiting for something, whether it's, over processing something, whatever it might be, is to look at those things that are not adding value to your product and saying, or your process, and saying, well, let's either not do it at all, or if it's a necessary non-value added process, I mean, in the case of engineering, it might be setting the machine up. You're not adding any value while you do it. But then, as you've said, is get someone else to do it. If you've got stuff in your business or stuff in your life that needs to be done, but it's not adding value for you, or not adding any forward motion, if you like, get someone else to do it, whether that's cooking your dinner or going out and buying it, and get it already made. If it works for you, and that's kind of your, it's not adding value for you, get someone else to do it.
Yeah, I started using, a decorator was one of the first things, a gardener at one point. And then it was funny, I changed with the gardener because the kids started becoming of an age where they wanted pocket money. So I did the gardening with the kids. And although it may have taken even longer, the value was that they were working with me and learning how to cut the grass and trim, and they had jobs. So the value was there. Do you know what I mean? It was a different, I was seeing it from a different place. But if it was just a case of the grass needed cutting, that outsourcing that, and someone said that you've got to look at your hourly rate of pay, and then work out what could you be doing, or what could you be outsourcing. And most people on a sort of 30 grand and above should be getting people to wash their cars or getting people to cut their grass, unless they enjoy doing it.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's when there's the value in it.
Yeah. As my daughter would say to me, I love washing my car. I don't, actually. It's just enough. No one else to do it.
Oh, what, you love washing your car?
She always says that, because it seems that every time she comes home, I'm washing the car. So she quite often say, I love that car more than anyone else. But it is purely because no one else will wash it. Yeah. That's the only reason I'm doing it. So if I can get someone else to do it, I'm quite happy to hand it over, as long as they do it right.
I like sort of, the stuff in the garden. I like sort of cutting the grass, and it's part of that creative process. But I would outsource a lot of it, and I do outsource a lot of it. Yeah. And I think that is coming back to the compass when I work with people with their energies, and work out what you've got the most energy for. And what you've got the least. And we're doing it with what we're developing in business wise. What do you, me and Paul, what shouldn't we be doing, and what should we be doing? And then working on that. So me working more creatively, so developing the web stuff, and then not stuck and clogged up on the admin stuff so much, or the process stuff. And you're the process guy, so coming up with the systems and stuff, and getting rid of those. I think when anyone comes into a role, and definitely with coaching businesses, getting to align people to move into roles that this gives them more energy, and out of roles that is dragging them back. And that what do you call it, slipstream? What's that in aerodynamics of people in their workplace is essentially you've got, and I've got this cog that I use for fully on. It's a valve block off of a lift, fully off or in conflict.
Yeah.
And you want to be one or the other, don't you? So Sunday you want to be fully off, and then Monday you want to be fully on, but you never want to be in this conflict of resistance in any way, because that's where there's just dissipated energy. You know, heat becomes and forms there, and it just is constricting in what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we've spoke about it with like the volunteers to help us out. You know, it's important that we can, because there are people out there that love gardening. There are people out there that love washing cars. There are people out there that love doing arty things, you know, and it's aligning them to roles that we have within what we're doing to say, okay, well, there's, you know, an opportunity there for you to go and do that. And then we're not doing the stuff that we, as you say, was not adding value for us. And that's really important, is that alignment with what your strengths are and what it is that you want to do.
But you've got to be open to that, haven't you? To that energy, because you can't. I could sit there and think, like, your daughter thinks you like washing the car, and she knows you, but she's not open to the energy, and this is where it all becomes personal, because it may look like, you know, and there's loads of people in their jobs that it may look like they're energized and they love doing that. But truthfully, if you're open, you don't want to wash the fucking car. You know,
I just want it done right. That's the thing with me. I could hand it over, but I'll probably go, well, you haven't actually. I know I have done.
So you wouldn't take it
done it before, and I've gone, you haven't cleaned them wheels properly. Yes, I have. No, you haven't. Look, there's still. So in the end, I do it because I'm probably too much of a perfectionist for cleaning the car. But that's where my dilemma is, that I'm quite happy to hand it over, provided it's cheap enough and they do a good job.
But that's an interesting point, though, because that is a block, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is the same with people in business and roles and I've worked with people that, well, I can't get them to do it because they don't do it shit. There is then a point where they are then limited, because if they can't create a system to train them well, so if you could train someone to wash your car properly and hand it over, so that 100%, and I've got,
and you can, that's the point, you can do that, can't you?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the people that I would pick in to clean the car, as in my children, didn't have the energy. They didn't want to do it in the first place. So I'm pointing, I could have the biggest long list of things they need to do. Yeah. They'd go from the first one to the last one and miss the middle bit because they don't want to do it, which is fair enough. Their energy ain't there.
I had exactly the same thing with my kids. Like, Dad, I just think you need to care a lot less. Yeah. I'm like, no, Sam, you need to care more. And there's this conflict of like, just let's just leave that and go and have a cup of tea, Dad.
Yeah.
Like, no, we've got to do it properly. But and then you're in conflict.
Yeah.
And it's funny that unless you can put essentially an effective system in for training, so you can delegate effectively, then your business won't grow.
Yeah.
Because you can't outsource effectively, because you can't let go. And it might be an issue with letting go, or there's an issue with, okay, well, I've not got someone that can do that job properly.
Yeah.
But it comes up, I think it's an interesting point with people. Anyone that's listening to this in management that delegates would understand that. And this is sometimes the problem is when you're dealing with people. I remember this term where they talked about, if you're a 7 or 8 out of 10 in the business you're in, and you're delegating down to someone who's a 4, 5, and 6, they're never going to be you, or they're not you, because they're not where you've been. But you've got to manage them, and you've got to get used to delegating down to people that aren't at your level. And the problem is we just function thinking that everyone should do what we're doing, but if they were doing that, they would be taking your job. So letting go of that, they aren't going to do it how you do it, but coming up with a system where they can do it effectively enough to be able to hand over to a client or pass on down the line. That's the point of necessity, getting over that. But I would do it like this, or quicker. You know, I would do it quicker. And I know I've found that I have that with, definitely at work with guys, that I would have done that in half a day and they took a day. letting go of that is difficult, but effective for people to learn.
Yeah. And it falls back to, again, I constantly go back to the 8 wastes, because quite often, and it's probably the case, we use the analogy with a car, that I overproduce on the cleaning, you know, to the point where I'm just sort of, oh, it's got to be all that dust in there as well. Whereas I've driven down the road and that bit of dust I've watched has already back in it. You know what I mean? So I probably overproduce something, which is wasting time, really. Whereas if they were to clean it, it's probably more than adequate. But in my eyes, I want to overproduce it. So I've got a learning thing to take there, perhaps, that, you know, clean is clean enough. It's a car at the end of the day. It sits out the front and it's going to get dirty.
I think, yeah, potentially then is looking at what are you then choosing, because that time is being spent on that. A nice way of looking at it is, for me at the moment, trying to drop weight, there's pain in me not eating something, but there's pain in me eating something. And that carrying the weight constantly is painful in itself, and it's picking the pains. So there's pain in you washing that really, really well, because it takes a little bit of time there. But there's also pain in you not washing it well. Yeah. And it's just picking which one you want to accept. Because for me, I still ride the van and a car, but I'll take them both through Tesco's car wash, £3 or £4. It's easy for me, but then I've not got any value as much in cars. Whereas I will spend the time doing the house. But and it's just funny how, but this is different values, isn't it? You've got different values and stuff. But we could chat all day about it. So do you want to wrap up with anything?
No, not really. As I say, I think on the lean stuff, again, if anyone was actually looking at it and wanted to sort of make a start in it, they're the first things I would look at. From a, you know, if you're not actually having anyone come in to do anything, the first thing just to be looking at is how much of the time that we spend doing stuff is adding value to our product. And that's a really good start, because you can save an awful lot by removing all the wastes that exist.
There was one thing I noted. There's a bit in that Stuffication book that I wrote down, because it was talking about consumerism and building up and clogging up. And there was this one point there, the law of diminishing marginal utility. And it basically talks about, so the first cup of tea you have is lovely. But the second cup of tea, it's not so lovely. And that so when we buy stuff, for that newness, for that first time, and this law of diminished marginal utilities, understanding that spending less time on consuming stuff and buying stuff and more time on spending with people is where, in this report, they look at happiness, and they go back in centuries of how it was affected. And they look at countries like America and the UK compared to third world countries. And they say that when you've got to a point of being able to function, so you can eat, you know, when you've covered the basic necessities in life, after that, happiness is irrespective. It's people that then get more stuff and more stuff actually become sadder. That there's no relation to it. So in terms of living lean, I think that the point I want to leave is that having more stuff doesn't make you happier. It actually clogs you up, because you've got more stuff. You've got a nice car, you've got to clean it. You know, you've got to manage it. And that law of diminishing marginal utilities, it's interesting how you see things that at the first cup of tea is nice, but then you have another and another for the sake of it, because you still want that first cup of tea, but you're not going to get it. And you've got to let go of that, what do you actually need versus what, like you say, in that second cup of tea is that wastage, isn't it? It's Anyway,
stuff.
We're done.
Super. Thank you.
Cheers, Lee. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Yeah, and we'll see you again soon, no doubt.
See you later.
Yeah, see you later.